Rise, man.
The Force will be with you.
Always.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Star Wars Meg, here to give you all of the news from a galaxy far, far away, and as always to provide you with a Mandalorian Season 2 update. So it's been a couple of days since I've done these, and today is a special one because I have reached 14,000 subscribers. I would like to thank each and every one of you for your support, and also thank you to all of my patrons who help make this channel possible. So today we have some really exciting news, and before I get into it, please may I ask you to hit like down below, to subscribe to this channel if you're brand new, and welcome if you are, and also make sure you hit the notification bell to be alerted each and every time I post new Star Wars content. So my friends, without too much jibber jabber, let's get into it. First of all, I just want to say Chapter 11 drops on Friday. I could not be more hyped. And I'm sure we're going to have so much to talk about, and it's going to be a great one. So let me get into our first news article. Before I talk about this big secret that could be revealed in this season, let's cast our minds back to Chapter 10. So this article from CBR is talking about the quote-unquote rogue Jawa that we see in the opening scene on Tatooine. The article title is "The Mandalorian's Rogue Jawa is actually a Force Awakens link." So this was a nice little cameo / Easter egg that they included, which harkens back to the beginning of the sequel trilogy before the fandom got divided over The Last Jedi. So they write, in its first season, The Mandalorian helped to redefine Jawas as not simply junk collectors, but also as formidable fighters, as shrewd negotiators. Now in its second season, the Disney Plus series appears to have introduced another take on the Tatooine scavengers, a rogue Jawa. Except, upon closer inspection, he turns out not to be a Jawa, but instead a direct link to Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Picking up straight after Season 2's premiere, the passenger follows Din Djarin, played by Pedro Pascal, as he races across the desert towards Mos Eisley on a borrowed speeder bike loaded with Krayt Dragon meat, Boba Fett's armor, and of course, the child. But this being the Mandalorian, nothing goes right for the bounty hunter, who's ambushed by a trio of bandits, including what looks to be a Jawa that's traded in the signature robes and the relative comfort of a sandcrawler for a life of crime. However, this diminutive cutthroat has been identified as none other than Scrap Jormo Tito, the scavenger who pestered Rey on Jakku in The Force Awakens, set about 25 years after the events of The Mandalorian. Although Mando quickly defeated two of the bandits, Scrapjaw is shrewd enough to detect the bounty hunter's weakness, the child. He threatens the child with a knife, which immediately opens up negotiation for anything in the wreckage of the Mandalorian's speeder bike. Scrapjaw, with his small stature and scavenging ways, can easily be mistaken for a Jawa. His language even resembles Jawa'ese. The goggles of his metal mask even evoke legendary artist Ralph McQuarrie's early sketch of the Jawas, which envisioned them as vaguely rat-like creatures with goggles, accounted for the glowing red eyes beneath the hood. So obviously Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni do a phenomenal job of harkening back to earlier Star Wars films. Already in Season 2 we've had so many references not only to the original trilogy, but also the expanded universe. Now with regards to episodes 1 and 2 of Season 2, or Chapter 9 and Chapter 10, we have had a lot of return of the Jedi references. A lot with Boba Fett in the first one, which was called the Marshal, and also in Chapter 10's The Passenger. Now with regards to this character Scrapjaw, I initially thought it was a Jawa, but it turns out his species has not been identified. And so even though he's made canonical appearances, it could turn out that he was a rogue Jawa after all. So do let me know what you guys think of this character. Did it strike you as a Jawa? Did you think it was a scavenger Jawa, a rogue Jawa as this article states? You decide for yourself in the comments. So now let's move on to this very interesting article by Inverse, which talks about a quote-unquote mind-blowing secret in The Mandalorian Season 2. Now this big secret relates to Peli Motto, seemingly an innocent character who's on Din Djarin's side, who helps repair the Razor Crest when it needs to, but in this case she could know a lot more than she comes across as knowing. So the article starts by asking the question, does Peli Motto own every single classic droid in Star Wars? What we do know is that she does not own C-3PO, R2-D2 or BB-8, but she seems to have nearly every other old school bucket of bolts hanging around. And in Season 2, The Mandalorian seems to be doubling down on Easter eggs, mostly centered on the classic Star Wars planet Tatooine. So if Peli does have a lot of the old droids that we saw in A New Hope and The Phantom Menace, what does that say about her backstory? Did she know Luke Skywalker personally, or perhaps even Uncle Owen or Han Solo? So let's look at the droid Easter eggs and see what they tell us. Starting with The Mandalorian Season 1, we did see Peli Motto surrounded by a ton of droids in her Mos Eisley docking bay. But which droids have we actually seen so far? The first classic droid we saw with Peli Motto was actually from the prequels, the infamous pit droids that ran around Watto's shop and confused Jar Jar Binks, faithfully helped Peli Motto fix the starships that came in. Do these pit droids indicate that Peli knew Anakin Skywalker or even Jar Jar Binks? Unlikely, but hey, maybe she bought them from Watto himself. The last time we saw Watto, he was pretty hard up, so maybe he sold these droids to Peli Motto sometime before the Empire came into power. She would have been a lot younger back then, but it's not totally out of the question. Although we saw a famous power droid, the Gonk droid, in the first episode of The Mandalorian ever, Peli Motto also has a few stashed in her hangar bay in her first episode too. These droids are pretty dang common. Seems unlikely that these droids give her any sort of connection to a classic character from either the prequels or the original trilogy. But moving on, it is clear from chapter 9 and 10 that she does have possession of R5-D4. When the Jawas brought all their droids to sell in the last family moisture farm, Uncle Owen initially bought 3PO and R5. But then R5-D4's head exploded, and the last family got R2 instead. Yes, Luke says this R2 has a bad motivator, but it's been fairly well established that the droid's name, the red one, was R5. What does it mean that Peli Motto owns this droid? Well, it means that she traded with the same Jawas who sold R2 and 3PO to Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. Did Peli Motto know the last family and Luke? It seems very possible that the answer is yes. In The Mandalorian Season 2 Episode 2 or Chapter 10, Peli Motto calls the Treadwell droid by name. We saw this kind of droid being sold by the Jawas in A New Hope, but we also saw several of them working for the Lars Moisture Farm in the same film. Just like the Gonk droids, you could argue that these droids are common enough that there's no connection between this Treadwell and the ones that interacted with Luke and Uncle Owen. Then again, it stands to reason that someone went to the Lars farm after the Imperials killed Owen and Beru. Maybe Jawas or other scavengers got hold of this Treadwell from the Lars farm and later sold it to Peli Motto. But there is another link between Peli's character and the original trilogy characters. So Peli Motto seems to have Han Solo's table in The Passenger. While playing Sabak with an alien called Dr. Mandible, Peli commits Mando to a job that involves ferrying a frog-laid alien across the sector at sub-light speeds. But this deal is made at the Mos Eisley Cantina, the famous bar in which Han Solo killed Greedo and made the deal to take Obi-Wan Kenobi to Alderaan. Peli seems to know the bar pretty well and appears equally comfortable at this table. At this point, it's been about 9 years since the events of A New Hope, and it's very likely that Peli was working in the Mos Eisley docking bays at the time. This fact, combined with her hanging around the Mos Eisley Cantina, means it's very likely she does know or know of Han Solo. Sure, Han didn't live on Tatooine, but he seemed pretty comfortable at that table and had made many visits to it before. Crucially, both Han Solo and Luke Skywalker are alive during the events of The Mandalorian, and if Peli Motto rubbed elbows with both of them via a famous bar and several bots, it seems possible, however unlikely, that either of those guys could show up to do a little business with Mando too. Now this is where things get very interesting, because if Peli Motto knew Han Solo and knew Luke Skywalker, or at least just one of them, it's a possibility that she puts Mando in contact with them. Now the reason being, she seems to understand the Force, and this is something I've seen a lot of people commenting on my channel when I did my full breakdowns for chapters 9 and 10. She seems to know quite a bit about the Force, and in doing so, she could be the key link between Mando and the enemy sorcerers, the Jedi, further into Season 2. I want you to think back to the first trailer for The Mandalorian Season 2, and we hear the armorer talking to Mando and that the child's people were these enemy sorcerers called the Jedi who had an ancient feud with the Mandalorians. Now at this point in Season 2 at Chapter 10, he's not aware of the Jedi just yet, or at least he doesn't know enough about them. So when he does find out, it could be that Peli Motto puts him in contact with Luke. Could she be holding this deep secret that she does know enough about the Force because she had contacts with either Han Solo, who obviously knew Leia and Luke, or Luke Skywalker himself? This is where her character is very interesting, and I don't think it's a coincidence we've had so much of her in the initial 2 episodes. But we will have to wait and see how this plays out further on in the season. I think it's a bit too early to say for sure that this is her connection to the Jedi, but I think she will play a pivotal role somewhere down the line. And now, my friends, we move on to a really interesting article from Comic Book, and this one is about Sasha Banks and her role in The Mandalorian. So the title states, The Mandalorian Season 2, WWE star Sasha Banks is quote-unquote so in shock over secret Star Wars role. Banks' mysterious cloaked character, whose identity is fueling speculation after making a brief appearance in the first trailer of the new season now airing on Disney+, is believed to arrive in the season's third episode, Chapter 11, releasing Friday, November 13th. Ahead of her debut in the television side of the Star Wars galaxy, an extremely tight-lipped Banks opened up about her acting future with Digital Spy. So she wrote, "I'm beyond extremely blessed. I cannot believe that I am in two of the biggest universes in the whole world, WWE and Star Wars." Banks said this of her Mandalorian role. She says, "I'm so in shock, I just can't believe it." When asked if she might pursue other acting roles after Star Wars, Sasha Banks said, "I act every single week on Friday Night SmackDown, so I love performing and I love entertaining. So wherever that takes me, then that's where I want to be. I have plans for making incredible big things for myself. I'm really excited for the future," Banks added. "I've been working non-stop to accomplish all my dreams that I've had since I was a little girl, so wrestling is not just the only thing." Sasha Banks' so far unidentified character is one of the several new faces appearing in the sophomore season of the Jon Favreau created Star Wars live-action show The Mandalorian. And like this article states correctly, we will hopefully get Sasha Banks in Chapter 11. I'm super hyped to find out if she is Sabine Wren, or if she's not, whoever she's playing I'm sure will be fascinating for the rest of the season. And you know, this is what I love about being part of the Star Wars fan community. Yes, there's some toxicity, but at the same time, we can all speculate and talk about what we saw, whether it's going to see it on the big screen with, you know, actual feature films, or whether it's watching The Mandalorian and other series on Disney Plus related to Star Wars. We can all have a big discussion and debate things we liked and didn't like, and the future of the franchise as well. And so, my friends, our final article is probably the most fascinating one in this episode, and this is about a potential leak for a character we haven't seen yet in The Mandalorian Season 2 that will show up. The article states, Star Wars The Mandalorian has revealed some connections to Rogue One, which could also indicate more about where Season 2 is headed. Star Wars fans over on Reddit are pointing out that a new card revealed from the Topps Star Wars card trader app's iconic The Mandalorian character set depicts an Imperial tank trooper. That model of Imperial trooper of course first appeared in Rogue One and has also appeared in the Star Wars Rebels animated series, which is set in the same early days of the Rebellion. There's some debate about what this image means specifically, whether it's actually a tank trooper or some other character simply wearing the helmet. There are some pretty significant ways that the tank troopers could figure into The Mandalorian Season 2. One of the biggest events that has been rumoured for Season 2 is possible flashbacks to the Great Purge of Mandalore, in which the Empire slaughtered the Mandalorians and banished them from the planet, seizing their Beskar steel and turning Mandalore into an Imperial training centre. Last we saw in Rebels, Mandalorians Sabine Wren and Bo-Katan recovered the Darksaber and went to unite Mandalore against the Empire. In the finale of Season 1 of Mando, though, we see Moff Gideon wielding it, meaning that he probably stole it from Bo-Katan. That's all to say there's a major story to tell about what Gideon did to Mandalore, and it could definitely involve heavy artillery like tank troopers. So what is this leak supposed to tell us? So that's a really fascinating one, guys, and I really hope you enjoyed my video. If you did, please give me a big fat like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and also please consider becoming a patron of mine on Patreon. For just $2 or $10 a month, you get exclusive perks and access to content that is not found here on YouTube. So I will see you tomorrow. I'm Star Wars Meg, wishing you a phenomenal rest of the day, no matter where you dwell in the galaxy. Have a good one.